University, we have repoed outside. We're actually outside of Deakin Edge right now in our Joost greenhouse. Now, are we still in the middle of Melbourne? I don't know. We have, if you ever come down to Fed Square and when you come and visit us, which I know you're going to do in the next couple of months and into the years and years and years to come, you're going to find out the back, right opposite the Yarra River here, we have a brand new Joost greenhouse. Now, this is the man himself, named after Joost. Can I ask you, middle of the city, why not? Can you tell us a bit about the why we're building a big greenhouse here?
Well, it was at the request of Fed Square. About 12 years ago, we built the first greenhouse on the other side of Fed Square, which was really the first example of a zero waste system.
Right.
Food on the roof. We had 120 tonne of soil on the roof, and we harvested potatoes and cucumbers and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, the guy said, do you want to come back? And this concept has evolved, and now it's a tiny house. It doesn't look that tiny, but Matt and Joe that are here are going to live here for the next 6 months, and we're going to celebrate food that you can grow where you live.
Oh,
so it's a completely zero waste system.
Great.
So we're using organic waste to make methane through a biodigester. We're collecting cardboard to make to grow mycelium for mushrooms. We've got about 200 odd different plants growing on the roof. So we'll get to experience some of that today. But it's really trying to inspire people to think differently about our food system. And my dream is to see Melbourne as a city have more biodiversity than the Daintree rainforest. I really imagine a city can actually be a complete ecosystem.
God, that would be brilliant if we can get to that. It'd be awesome. Now we're actually in a construction site because we're literally building it as we go. The poor Tylers. Thanks, Tylers, for not working at the moment. Downstairs, we're building as we go. So when do we move in? When's the first day in this, dare I say, the best location in Melbourne as well?
I reckon.
This location is epic.
Ask the boss.
And it's got a lot of cultural heritage here too. There was an Aboriginal gathering ground here before white settlement, and it just feels like a very special location. And the natural amphitheatre here allows us to have lots of groups, and our goal is to inspire school kids to come through. So together with the NGB, we're doing tours that people can book online.
Yep.
And it's really just to get people excited about how much food. There's apparently 30,000 different plants that we can eat. We really only eat about 100.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Imagine if we actually do that, and that's why Matt and Joe are so integral to this, because they're two of Australia's best chefs. I've worked with them both for a long time, and we've worked on this for 5 years now?
Yeah, at least 10 years of working together, but this idea is probably about 5 years of fine-tuning and practicing ideas and, getting better at cooking, really. Just kind of looking back at a lot of proven primitive techniques and then adding a bit of technology with that to create what, we're going to call this new cuisine, this urban cuisine.
God, that's great. And Matt and Joe are with us today as well, who are going to be cooking for us. Now we're looking at Christmas sides. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Now I've got it here, ultimate kind of summer sides for us. We've got barbecue greens, tiger nut thinned peaches. God, I wish I could. And then Joe's going to cook rejected cherries. I feel sorry for them. That's okay. We'll get them back to life. Beans and burrata curds as well. Is this
That's
is this
a bit
all
of an option, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm all for options. That's what I love about the sides. I'll leave you very, very shortly so you can get into it, so we can tuck in. And so I guess can I ask for the demonstrations here? Is that what people can see as we go along? And you're living here?
Yeah,
We'll be
we'll be living
here.
downstairs. Yeah.
Is it like Big Brother? We can watch you and up to this pan that kind of.
No, we've got a bit of a barricade, but
Okay,
it'll be
cool.
very open. But it's a pretty amazing opportunity to do something that's never been done before.
so
So
brilliant.
just got to get involved and give it a go.
All right, I'll leave you to tantalise us to what you're going to do. Thanks very much for having us, Joost, as well, right in the middle of construction.
And so as well, the building's made from straw. So it's made from organic barley straw, which is the world's biggest waste product.
Yeah.
So rice, oats, barley, wheat, grains, any grain that produces a hollow stalk is a brilliant material for insulating buildings, and that's made in Bendigo. And then we've got a cladding on the outside, which is also totally unique and new, which was it's called Form Flow, which is a corner bend, and we've kind of reversed this building. The foundations, it just sits on this site, so we haven't had to excavate the site, but we've got about 40 tonne of soil that actually stopped this building from blowing away. So it's reverse engineered, and that means that we actually couldn't put any windows or anything into the building until the garden was in first. And I love that the garden was the first installation, and the engineer said, don't put any cladding on, because of course the building acts as a sail. So as soon as we had the soil on, we were allowed to start actually building.
Well, that could be a test this afternoon with the storm possibly coming through.
I
So I
believe
should let
so.
you do it. Just a reminder also, we have our chat bot open on the website. So on the right-hand side of the screen you're watching right now on that web page. Send your questions through. We'd love to get so many questions. You, of course, go into the draw to win $1,000 worth of vouchers, which is done for Christmas. Having said that,
Right.
I'm eating this stuff, to be fair. I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for
Great.
joining us, and please tantalise.
Cool. Well, I'll kick off. We're going to do some barbecued greens. So when, Aussies, we love barbecuing. We barbecue a lot. It's outdoor cooking. It's really nice. Doesn't heat up the house. But generally, it's meat. We're always barbecuing snags or steaks or chicken, whatever it might be. But I think like vegetables benefit from a barbecue hugely. So we're going to do some greens, a bunch of different greens that we've just picked off the rooftop. So we've got some... It's kind of been sitting around for a while. I picked it this morning, but we've got some kale, some shards, some cavolo nero, and some parsley. And we've got a raging hot barbecue just cooking with charcoal. And so I've tied the little bunches together. I've just used some chives that I've just lightly blanched in some boiling water. And then you can kind of tie the greens together. Because when you're barbecuing, it's quite hot. And if you've got 20 different leaves, it's really hard to move them around the grill. So by tying them in the little bundles, they kind of look nice. You get a bit of everything in there. And we'll get a nice char on the outside. And as it starts to cook, it'll create a bit of steam. So it'll cook the inside. So we'll end up with multiple textures from this little bunch of greens. So
many flavours.
yeah, and just really nice flavours and just really like utilising it all. So we're just going to put a bit of extra virgin olive oil and then I'll get them on the grill.
Awesome.
It's also really, when you're cooking kale, if you eat kale raw, it's really hard for us to digest raw kale in particular. Silver beet's a bit easier, but once you cook it, you're breaking it down and your body's able to absorb a lot more nutrients from it. So it's actually really beneficial.
Yeah, so just a bit of oil. The oil is the kind of cooking medium. If we don't put any oil or fat onto it, you'll just get a really like crispy dark char and it won't be very pleasant. It's not nice to eat and not really great for you. So a little bit of oil just helps to kind of get the cooking happening. So
Transfer the heat.
just kind of, we're not drown them at all. We just dress them lightly and I'll just get them on the grill.
Awesome. And then with all that soil that's been on the roof to stop it from blowing away, 4 weeks ago we planted quite a lot of vegetables and I cannot believe how quickly it's all grown. So this salad is based around the beans and the snow peas and what do they call it? Soybeans,
Yeah,
chickpeas.
yeah.
There's so many things growing. So this is just a really light salad, lots of raw vegetables and blanched, that if you're having a picnic, which I think a lot of us are going to be doing this year for Christmas, this is a great one. So we've got some cherries. So cherries, these ones are rejected. They're a lot of food that's grown on farms actually doesn't make it off the farm. So there's a lot of seconds which usually go into jam making, but I've just halved these ones. Then we've got some shallots, which I've just sliced really finely and then popped into ice water. And the ice water with a bit of salt in them takes away some of that acidity and makes them a little bit more palatable for a raw onion. So we've got some shallot and then some hazelnuts, because this one doesn't have any kind of dairy in it. We are going to add some burrata if you're at home, but in the house we're not using any dairy because we don't have a cow, which has been pretty hard.
Yeah, so just to give you a background on that, so Jo makes the most incredible things with dairy. She's always had access, or not always, but for the last 4 or 5 years had access to a brilliant little dairy farm called Yarra Valley Dairy, where Tyrone has 12 cows and she was getting the most incredible biodynamic milk. But of course here we don't have that option. So I started about a year ago researching alternatives, and obviously we can't have an almond grove here. So I discovered tiger nuts, which actually is one of the most primitive foods that we've eaten. So it's estimated that between 1.5 and 2 million years ago, 80% of our nutrients came from tiger nuts. So Nutcracker Man is named after the tiger nut because that's where it took them on average 2 to 3 hours a day to forage enough nutrients. So it's incredible, but what it does is that in Spain, southern Spain, in northern Africa, it's the alternative to dairy. They actually have tiger nut milk as an alternative to dairy, and one little tuber will produce 100, so it's incredibly productive. So we're growing tiger nuts here.
But they look different, don't they? Because they grow under a grass.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, probably everyone is already growing tiger nuts. It's like everywhere. I've even found it in the grass out the front here at Fed Square. And when I discovered that, and it's gone all over the world, and it grows like a weed pretty much, and it's classified as a weed in many places. But It's so nutrient dense, high fat, so it allows you to make custards, and the milk is quite sweet. And yeah, so Joe's been experimenting with it, and
we've switched over. Matt's going to use some of that today. He's made a dressing which he'll tell us about in a bit. And then I've just got hazelnuts because where we were working up in the Yarra Valley, incredible hazelnut orchards up there. So using nuts as another type of fat rather than dairy, adding that feeling, when you eat dairy, you feel full.
Yep.
But it's another type of fat. So we're going to have some hazelnuts in this salad. And then I've got a dressing. So instead, if you're going on a picnic, instead of bringing everything with you, you can chuck it all in a jar. So we're going to have these amazing beehives on the roof here. So we've got some honey down the bottom, and then some sherry vinegar, and then just some oil on top. And we're going to shake that. Do you want to shake that?
Sure.
And then herbs. So what I've done with the beans and snow peas in here, I've just blanched them really quickly. So brought some water up to the boil, plunged the beans in first, and then the snow peas. Put them in there for 20 seconds, and then taken them out and put them into ice water. We don't have our water yet, so we did that at home. But it's a picnic, so we've just brought them with us. And then when we were out on the roof, because our snow peas and beans are growing so quickly, I'm actually just going to put some in raw. I think eating
they're so young and tender
and so sweet. So I'm going to pop those in. And then in the recipe that we've sent out, we had yellow beans, but I found these peas, so we're going to pop those in instead. Which are you can hear them crunch.
So one thing that has blown everyone away is how the garden is growing really well. And it's hard to believe, but the soil in the barrels is completely made from waste. So we've made it from composted pine bark, organic waste from city councils that's been composted, worm castings, rock dust, mycelium, mushroom compost. So the soil is incredibly productive, and I've used some really clever people up in the Yarra Valley who have made soil their whole lives, and so we've made the soil completely from waste.
That's one thing that I can't get my head around, is that we can actually make soil. It's not necessarily just going to hardware store buying a bag of soil, which a lot of us do, but I just can't believe that you can make your own soil.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And the one thing that I've learned about making soil is no matter how many, I know some people that have spent their whole lives making it and they're still learning. You never stop learning. It's so complex.
So I've just seasoned the blanched beans and snow peas, and I popped in the cherries and the shallots. And then I'm going to put in just half of the herbs. So I've got some flat leaf parsley, some dill, and some just regular mint. So this is all growing on the roof at the moment. And then Joost's...
Smells so good.
He's mixed up our dressing. So the honey, I just love honey. And we're not going to have sugar here. So the way that Matt and I are going to be cooking is just what we have on the house, and it doesn't survive without us, and we can't survive without eating the food, which is pretty amazing. So honey's going to be, for me, pretty important because we can't use sugar. So I'm just going to lightly dress the salad. And there's so many textures. I'm all about textures with food. I think that's pretty important. Then I've got these roasted hazelnuts, so just 170 degrees in an oven, just until they're nice and golden. Pop them in, and I've just crushed them up.
And hazelnuts is an incredible plant that you can grow in an urban environment. So we could easily have hazelnuts along our streets, and they're not so big that they actually damage cars. A lot of nuts don't get grown because people are worried about nuts falling off and damaging cars. But these trees they can prune them back so they're quite small. So in the future, I believe hazelnuts will become much more a part of a sustainable food source.
And herbs must be good for you if they have that much flavour in them. So just pop that down.
And what a difference it makes when you actually just pick them as you need them.
We don't actually need much because they're so full of flavour. That's what I'm finding with, picking up some raw beans that you've grown. I mean, that was 4 weeks ago from seedlings, so probably only 6 weeks.
I think we planted the seedlings on the 25th of August. We planted the seeds on the 25th of August. So pretty much everything that you see, apart from the chilies and obviously apples and stuff, is from the 25th of August.
Yeah.
So we planted some cabbages in July. But
that's right. I think it's you don't need to mask anything. A lot of cooking in the past has been you kind of mask a flavour, but we're just only enhancing what's already there, that's what I love about cooking. So lots of textures. Just want to get it all on there.
And cherries is actually another. I mean, some say, well, the World Health Organization actually said that between 40 and 50% of all food grown doesn't actually make it off the farm, which is insane when you think about the food shortages that we have. So the fact that Joe's used what really are seconds, or cherries that would otherwise get thrown away. We need to start understanding that farmers have got all sorts of issues. They might be sunburnt, or they might be split from rain, or they might be a little bit damaged from hail. So the more that we can embrace those ingredients, the better it is from an environmental point of view, because there's huge amounts of energy, water that goes into that.
And I think it's about eating within season and accepting that, okay, if it's going to rain, well, it might ruin a crop a little bit, or it might look different, but that's what happened in the season, rather than expecting things to be around all the time. And then I've just picked some flowers. Our rocket's going to seed, so that's when it shoots up flowers. Just going to pop them on. This is also the snow pea flowers that the pea shoots from there. So we've just picked them as well. These are really peppery, and you can see once it goes to seed, the leaves stop. They're going to go quite large, and then all the energy goes into producing the seed for the plant to reproduce. So there's so much flavour in the top of these, quite peppery.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. You could do this with asparagus. It's just about letting ingredients really sing and keep them pretty simple. They look so good. And that's it.
It's a shame that you can't smell what we. The salad dressing smells so good too. Do you want to have a smell?
Just like come in and taste. Well, sure, I'll just invite myself in. It is incredible.
Just a little bit more seasoning.
If
and
only
then
we could do smell-o-vision, you'd come.
I know. One day.
I'm sure Apple's working on it, mate.
Absolutely, yes.
And that is a Christmas side. Cherries have always been a part of my Christmas at home. We've always had a bowl of cherries on the Christmas table, and they're often the first thing to go.
And I love that, like you're saying, with the rejected cherries, where they're kind of like, I don't understand that concept personally. I don't understand where whether it's greengrocers or whoever sells, sometimes there's a certain looked at. And I think as consumers, do we really care that much when they say that banana's not round enough, or not shaped enough, or it's not?
It's changing, definitely.
Craig Rucastle, who did the War on Waste.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He did a whole episode on that, and that created such a storm and such a stir. In particular, he visited a banana farmer and said that 40% of the bananas were either too straight or too crooked.
Insane.
And from that moment on, both Woolworths and Coles said, right, from now on, we will have a section that sells that produce. And that has, in 2 years, completely changed what it does. Farmers are now able to sell a lot more of their carrots or bananas because people are aware. So it's all about being aware.
Once you've eaten it, it ain't shaped like that anymore. No. We don't need that. Can I ask, do you, you've kind of got perfect Christmas colours. Did you mean to do that, or was this...
Yeah, that's what
like
cherries are, aren't they?
Yeah, no, but I mean, the red and green happening and everything. Yeah, it is. Like, it's kind of even... But it looks great, and you're saying you don't have to kind of hide anything. I love that. Like, you haven't kind of... just place things, unless you're just way more professional than everything looks so placed perfectly, but it's all meant to be together, isn't it? Now I've got a couple other questions. My little iPad's gone a bit of a sleep.
So with this one, you could just eat it as a side with your meal, maybe with turkey or ham, or if you're having protein for Christmas dinner. But then if you just wanted to have a picnic, that's when you could pop in some burrata or a piece of fish, just something. Right. It's so simple, and it's about letting ingredients. You don't have to do a lot to them. They can just sing, and that's when they complement each other so well.
Matt, you've got bring it on in here as well. You've got the kale happening there. Now, Ren wanted to ask you, can you cook bok choy like you've cooked your kale?
Absolutely, yeah. Bok choy is good because it's got a really high moisture content, so as it starts to heat up, it'll start to steam. So if you're doing the little bouquets, I'd keep the harder leaves on the outside, like the kale and stuff, and put the bok choy or tatsoi, whatever it is, on the inside, and that water moisture in it will create steam, and it'll steam nicely. So you can see here, you can hear it's kind of crispy edges, but then the inside's still nice and we've created all that steam. So it's got multiple textures from the green leaves rather than just boiling it and it's all the same. We've got crispy bits, soft bits, nice tender bits, and just the chives there have just really acted as a tool to hold it all together. So you can achieve that nicely.
It smells so
Does anything
good.
not work on the barbecue? I mean, really?
No.
It's awesome, isn't it?
But the chives also impart flavour, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I've got one more question, and I'll leave you. And please
sure.
continue to send your questions into our chat bot as well. Being in the draw, I mean, that's one of the side things, but to get some great advice from these amazing people and chefs here. Can I? It's a bit of a side question here, but how do you control pests and disease in your garden? This is from Bernadine.
Well, there's a million different ways that you can do it, but obviously we're not spraying.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have said, oh my God, I found caterpillars. And so we've actually got kale. And the kale is planted I've got kale at every 3 metres. And as you go into spring, all the caterpillars and all the butterflies land straight on the kale. They're not interested in all the other stuff.
Right.
If the kale wasn't there, they would land on the other stuff.
Okay.
So I'm sacrificing the kale in order to be able to... So, people have called me and panicked, oh my God, that's being eaten. It's there for that reason, but they're leaving everything else. You just got to give them something.
Yeah.
And then, because we've got yabbies on the roof, we're actually feeding the caterpillars to the yabbies, and they're pretty crazy for it.
They love
I'm moving into this place. It's awesome. I'll leave you to continue on, but I'll
Thank
get some
you,
more
yeah.
questions for you.
Sure. So that's the grilled greens. For me, that's just an ultimate barbecue thing, particularly when you're cooking on charcoal. It just imparts this beautiful flavour. We've got all these beautiful textures going on as well. And this could be done with any greens, any leafy green vegetables. The tops of beetroots are great. That's another product that's wasted a lot. We use the root and the tops get discarded, but you can treat that as you would any kale or chard or anything. And it's actually got a lovely beetroot flavour, and it's quite a hardy leaf, so it holds up to the grill well. So we've got the tiger nut milk. So as the guys were talking about tiger nuts before, so like any other nut milk, just soak the tiger nuts in water overnight, blend them up with some fresh water. And I've just flavoured this a bit like the Spanish would a bread sauce. So there's some raw garlic, some cider vinegar, salt and pepper. So the tiger nuts are quite sweet. So the vinegar and the salt and the raw garlic, they kind of bring complementary flavours to balance out the sweetness. You get a bit of heat from the raw garlic, the tartness from the vinegar works really well against the sweetness of the nuts. So at first we thought this nut only really had applications in sweet food, in desserts, but as we're testing it more and working with it more, we can definitely see it's got applications for savoury as well. You could definitely substitute almond milk or any nut milk for this. What I love about a dish like this, it's vegan, and I'm by no means a vegan, but I think it's a really great way to eat. We don't eat a lot of meat. We eat veggies more so than we do meat. But if you can create these dishes that are vegan, and a lot of our food here will be, without realising it's vegan, I think that's a really strong point. It's a really good messaging point.
The first time Matt and I heated the tiger nuts, so you soaked them, then we blended them into milk, and we thought, oh, let's try and make some ice cream. And we were stirring it over the stove, and then all of a sudden it just thickened like custard. So it's similar to bunya nut, where it's got such a high starch content that, or like corn flour, that it is a thickener. So we're finding some really crazy applications for the tiger nuts, but this smells amazing.
Yeah, and the other thing, for those that are really interested in probiotic food, when you soak tiger nuts, first of all, the tiger nuts, especially if they're grown organically, have like a coating of microflora from the soil. When you're making tiger nut milk, it's raw, so it's uncooked. And when you put a cloth over it, when you soak them overnight, you can actually use that same water, and you've got so much biology in that water. It's raw tiger nut milk, and for gut flora, it's next level. It's really good. What have you got there, Matt? They look pretty interesting.
So these are thinned peaches. So if anyone's grown fruit before, you realise that you get lots of flowers, lots of fruit in the beginning, and often the tree can't handle the weight. So the trees will start to fall, or a big wind will come through like we're about to experience today and knock off a lot of this fruit. So I don't know the exact percentage, but it'd probably be a third almost, I'd say, of this young fruit falls from the tree, and often it's just discarded, but it has beautiful flavour. So I've just pickled these green peaches, and then we'll slice them, but they have this amazing almond marzipan kind of flavour. So rather than...
You didn't pickle them for very long either, did you?
No, maybe 3 weeks. Yeah. I thought it'd be much longer. I've always done them longer, but I thought I would try them and have a go today. So... And all you need to do is just really thinly slice them, and what we'll get is that beautiful nut flavour, but from a waste product, which is really cool.
Yeah, the other reason you thin them is so that the fruit can expand and grow, because if it gets too close together, disease can get between it and they just don't grow to their full potential. So often you're actually thin to...
Yeah. It's the same with carrots and beetroot, and many things are thinned and usually wasted. And a lot of traditional cultures actually have dishes like this to optimize and use those ingredients that you would otherwise throw away.
And so we just slice these, and we're just going to kind of put them in the little gaps of the leaves there, just so, the idea is this is a shared plate. You can grab your greens, swipe it through all of the tiger nut milk, and then you've got these little surprise pockets of because we pickled them, they've got the acidity. So again, we're playing off all of those different balancing flavors. And you can kind of plate it up so it looks like a plant again, which is kind of...
Or a Christmas tree.
Or a Christmas tree, because it's a Christmas side. Christmas tree with lights. There you go.
We both got baubles and lights.
Yeah. And so then we're just going to get some olive oil again and just kind of drizzle that over the top.
What I love is that is just one peach.
Yeah.
One peach.
And, and that from a flavour point of view will impart so much flavour. And there's obviously billions discarded and not used.
And I think that's a really interesting sort of proposition for Joe and I, is to find all of these different flavors and unique things from what we would consider normally as waste products. And we didn't invent this though either. This has been done for centuries all around the world. In a lot of European cultures, there's these unripe stone fruits have been around for a long time. In Japan, green plums are salted to make different seasonings. So it's nothing. We're not inventing anything here. We're just kind of taking a lot of tradition and technique from all over the world and imparting it to this little patch here in Federation Square. So, although proven primitive techniques are a big motivator and educator for us in the food that we're learning about, it's also implementing them with the technology that we have today. Once the kitchen's up and running and we've got our mealer appliances going, some of the stuff that we can then do is going to be phenomenal as well, with steam cooking, cooking in the combi oven, induction tops that are extremely efficient, oven
fermenting at different temperatures.
Different.
There's a drawer warmer that we've got installed that Matt and Joe probably rarely use it's a great way to ferment.
Yeah, it's a plate warmer, but it sits at 50 degrees. So for us to make our fish sauce and soy sauce, we can keep it at the right temperature. So it's kind of nice to see this technology, learn about it, but then use it in a different way. And I think, the more multi-purpose our equipment is in our kitchen, the more valuable it is.
Yeah. And as chefs, you get, when you grow your own food, you get access to a heap of other aspects of a plant that you don't get at a supermarket or as a fruit and vegetable supplier. You get shoots, you get seeds, you get flowers, you get the thinned vegetables. So for as chefs, we're having a ball because we're growing all our own food, and you walk out there and you see something, you think, oh, it's just an inspiration for a dish. Or
when you grow food, you understand, you're less wasteful when you grow food because you watch it through a whole process, and rather than dropping something on the floor and discarding it, you care more for things, so you don't do that. You're a lot more conscious. But when you grow food, you get so much more from an ingredient. Coriander, for example, we just buy traditionally little packets in plastic bags from the supermarket that have been trucked around the country. They're in plastic. They're kind of void of flavour and nutrients by the time we get them. More often than not, half of it sits in the fridge and gets discarded. And I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. So it's not, that we're any different in that regard. But when you grow coriander or any herb, you pick it and eat it, and it's full of life and it's full of flavour. You end up using less because you don't need to use so much. But then also watching the plants through their life cycle, when something like the rocket, when it goes to seed and its energy changes from going to the beautiful leaves to producing a seed pod, you get the flower first, and then you get the seed pod comes from that. So you're getting multiple ingredients from one thing. And green coriander seeds, coriander
so
flowers
amazing.
and then green coriander seeds is one of the most delicious ingredients I've ever cooked with. But it wasn't until I was cooking from a farm that I actually realized that was a real thing, because we all get, the dried coriander seeds.
So they actually came from a plant?
Yeah, they come from a packet or a tiny little round jar in the pantry. But then once you grow them and you see them green, it's just these little flavor bombs. But then also when you dry them and you use your own dried seeds, understanding where these things come from is a really big gap, I think, in our food system. Even I was a cook for probably 10 years before I realized this, and I'd use coriander seeds my whole time. It's one of my favorite ingredients. But it wasn't until in the last probably 5 or 6 years cooking from a farm that you see this stuff and you realize that there's so much more to give from a plant.
There's also this sense, I really believe there's a primal satisfaction that you get from planting a seed, watching it grow, and then eating the food. Especially, when you do work with Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Gardens and stuff like that, you see kids just relish that. And I really think that we've spent millions of years in our food system and the last 100 plus years trying to remove ourselves from the food system. And what's really amazing about the COVID situation is that there's this international push back to growing food with, seed merchants selling 5 years worth of seed in 6 months, and people running out of plants. And I think it's an incredibly exciting time for people to get back to growing food and getting excited about what it is that you can grow where you live. And yeah, this project is really inspired by a book that I read about 15 years ago. It was the work of Dr. Weston Price, who visited primitive people all over the world. And he was particularly interested in, he thought the Australian Aboriginals had achieved the best diet on earth. He was actually a dentist, and he found a group that had no tooth decay, and then studied their diet for years and researched their diet, and they ate on average between 400 and 500 different ingredients. They ate a lot of raw food, and a lot of tubers and seeds and greens, and that kind of, I think that's really amazing that, there was this population that we should be actually, celebrating a lot more, and we should be respecting what they achieved, and maybe we can actually, in a modern context, bring that to reality here at Federation Square, where 250, 300 years ago, this was a gathering place for first Australians.
It's such a, can I jump in here?
Yeah,
it's such an amazing message that this sustainability, everything you do with food here, and you're saying like Craig Group Castle, before his show, but I love that message, and it's been around anyhow, forever, but continuing here at Fed Square. A couple of questions just on that. One, we'll come back here, which we mentioned on before, but Jane had a question that why Fed Square? I mean, you mentioned this, 250, 300 years ago, but why? And we mentioned before why. Maybe for people who just jumped on board, why Fed Square in the city to build your greenhouse?
Well, I had my wedding photos here when it was being built. I just think it's actually a really beautiful architecture. It's the heart of Melbourne. It's on the Yarra River. I've got a really soft spot for this place. I think it's really special. And 12 years ago, I started a project which was really about getting people excited about growing food where you live. That was the greenhouse. And some new staff came on board a couple of years ago and called me and said,
You might have heard that. We're still building here. It's good.
The storm has arrived.
Yeah, it's here.
And they said, we'd love to have you back because there's such positive vibes around what you did 12 years ago. And Matt and Joe and I have been talking about doing something like this for so long that we stood on this spot a year ago and said, let's do it.
And it's a really great meeting place, like historically, but also today people can come from all suburbs around on a tram. It's easy to get to. It's easy for school groups to get here. It's like it's a communal space, and I think a building like this has to build the community. And I think it's just no better spot to do it. If we're out in the Dandenongs, people will automatically say too far. It just makes it. There's no excuse to not come and see the house here.
And we're building at the moment, as we mentioned. But when does this start? When do you officially move in, and for how long is that going again?
Well, we're really probably only about 10 days away from that. So
did you hear that downstairs?
That's why they've kept tiling. The boys are determined to get it done. I think they want to go home for dinner tonight.
We can always rely on tradies.
They've been pretty good here, I have to say. It's not a bad spot to be working though. It's and Federation Square have been amazing.
Yeah. So. And so 6 months.
Yeah.
Living here, and that's like 24/7. Just want to make it 24/7. 6 months here.
Yep.
I love this, and so people can obviously come by and just see how the progress is going. And,
Absolutely.
And more messages, I guess, through, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've got the diet being studied, nutrient density being done. We're working with the CSIRO, and this is not a concept that's commercial. You can't buy this. This is not about selling this house. It's just it's a creative approach to a solution, and I'm hoping that the three of us, can inspire people to start growing food at home.
Absolutely, and I really hope so. And not only, I guess, coming down here physically, but people online, can we follow the journey online as well?
Yeah, so we've set up a website called Future Food System.
Yep.
And that and Matt and Joe are both on Instagram, and I am Joost Bakker, Matt Stone, and Joe Barrett. And then we've set up an Instagram account for Future Food System, and when we move in, we start posting the food. Yeah. And this could actually be the first two posts right here.
Yeah, well, it could be your Christmas day. Now, just quickly here as well, talking about keeping food life going longer. Are there many? Oh no, where it is. A good recipe to use to freeze or preserve surplus greens. Is there any
Fermenting is
fermenting and
for greens
blanching.
over times, isn't it?
Yeah, fermenting's always a good one. Making a kraut or something similar. When you can use kale for that, you can use your shards. But if you are going to freeze them to like cook in a pasta or something, you can always blanch them, press all the water out, and like put it into ice cube trays or something like, or small containers, and freeze it that way. And then you've got it. You can use it for a pie filling or a pasta pretty simply from there as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with freezing stuff. You know, we all get a surplus from time to time, and if you can't pickle it, ferment it, you know, freezing is perfectly fine for some stuff. And I guarantee you, you know, organically grown greens that you've picked and loved and looked after frozen are going to be better than some, you know, junk from the supermarket anyway.
Same with dehydrating. Dehydrating is a great way if you have a heap of herbs. Dehydrate them, put them into a powder, put them into a salt, and then there's just another application and a way to use things.
And we're also dehydrating mushrooms. And what you do when you put a mushroom upside down with the gills facing up into the sun, after 2 days, it's loaded with vitamin D. So that one mushroom will provide enough vitamin D through the winter. So you can just grate it and put it on a salad, or you can put it on whatever your food. So there's one of our heroes is a guy called Sandor Elix Katz, and he's a great person to follow. He wrote the Bible on fermentation, which is the art of fermentation. It's a great book. You should follow him on Instagram as well.
We were talking just before we wrap up here, is about sustainability of, and the reject, talk about the poor old reject cherries today, but they're not, they're perfect cherries. But what we can do, now Sam had a question, is there anything that the public can help with minimising the seconds of produce that didn't make it to the market?
Cook seasonally.
Yeah, cook seasonally and connect with farmers. It's like, it's not easy for everyone to do, but get to a farmer's market, meet the people growing your food, and you'll get connections into getting that food. And it's kind of infectious. Once you start it, you'll find the next person and the next person. So I know it's not easy for everyone to do that all the time, but when you can, make time to nourish yourself, make time to meet the people that are growing your food, and start to understand. And
I love this, and I guess we'll make the final question really back to this amazing greenhouse you guys have here. Liz has asked, are there many native varieties of vegetables grown on your Joost house? Now, surely.
We've got not so many vegetables, but we've got warrigal greens, and we've also got native limes and
finger limes, lemon myrtle, mountain pepper, and we've got a few native species of mushrooms on the mushroom wall as well. So.
Awesome.
Yeah,
but we're definitely looking for more, and anyone that can help with that sort of stuff. You know, this is about sharing ideas, and if you're growing native foods, we'd love to chat with you as well.
And we've got some. What's actually really humbling, I find, is that our aquaponic systems on the roof holds yabbies, barramundi, and freshwater mussels.
Yeah.
And they're all ingredients that I'm sure have been eaten here for 60,000 plus years. You know, and we're celebrating those, and they're actually vital to this system working. And I think we're celebrating foods that have been eaten for a long time.
Yeah, this is awesome. Look, thank you so much for your time. And I'm so glad this is an introduction to the old Joost greenhouse to continue on. And I can't wait for people to come and check your progress in the next 6 months as well, online and also in person. Thank you for some great ideas for Christmas Day too. This is beautiful. And like you say, one little kind of thin pear, and that's all you need on your little side there. I love that. So easy to do. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone
so much insight.
Watching.
Absolutely. If you didn't hear all of it, or you missed a couple of moments, or you wanted to go over that again, don't forget that this whole tutorial will be on the Fed Square website next week, so you can go and rediscover how to make these dishes again for Christmas Day, to make sure we got all the ingredients right and all your great messages.
And also, if you want to tour the building, we're actually doing a virtual tour on Monday night at 7 p.m.
Oh, yes.
So get onto the Future Food System website, and you'll with Jeremy McLeod from Breathe Architecture, we're doing a walkthrough and explaining all the details. So please join us at 7 p.m. on Monday night.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't wait. And then I guess all the materials you've used too.
Yeah.
Talking about, I can't wait here. Thank you again to Joost, to Matt and Joe as well for your time today. But good luck.
Cheers.
Can't wait to see your journey here as well.
Thank you.